Welcome to Active Love Adoptions. I am your host, Jessica Griffith, and this is my lovely co-host, Heidi.
Okay.
And we are here today with Leah Alton, a birth mom of 18 years and an author and a public speaker. Is that correct?
Yes, except she's 19 now.
19. Okay, so 19
Yeah.
years. I know. I was looking, I might have been face or Instagram stalking you just so I could see.
Yeah. You gotta remember to update all the areas where I put that she has
Yeah,
a birthday.
exactly. When was her birthday? Like not the date,
Okay.
just
June. Yeah.
okay,
So
June. She's been 19 for a minute.
she's been 19 a little bit.
She's turning 20 soon. Okay, well, as I was reading your bio and just all your Instagram stuff, I was so fascinated, but also feel some like a kinship with you. I'm also a birth mother, and so just seeing different perspectives has been really awesome. And I love seeing all of your posts and things like that. Can you walk us through just your journey from, where you started to how you got to where you are now?
Absolutely. So I was 16 when I found out I was pregnant, like within weeks after my birthday, saw that positive test. And I told her birth father right away, and really he checked out at that point, was not interested in parenting, and really, said you should choose adoption or get an abortion. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna move forward and be a parent, and really didn't consider adoption at all because all I knew was closed adoption. And I could not imagine not knowing who this baby was or what she looked like when I knew she was a girl. And just really felt like, okay, I'll just figure this out myself. And my parents are really shockingly supportive, which I feel like is a rare thing that I was able to experience. One, as a pregnant teen, but also as a birth mother, their support from the very beginning of just like, what do you need? Let's get you into counseling. We'll, rally around you. And so that was really helpful to start wrestling through all these hard emotions from the beginning, and having a counselor to walk through and think through what is the best decision for myself, and not in a pressuring way, but just like, let's just explore your options and to make an informed decision. And in that is where I met other birth moms online and other adoptive moms that had open adoptions. And that was really eye-opening for me that there was kind of this middle ground possible where I could still know her and know that she is loved and that she knows that I love her, while also still growing up myself and being able to provide her a different kind of life than what I could give her at that time. Because I grew up in a single mom home, and I know she did the best she could with what she had, but I wanted my child to experience something different if I could give her that. So I think that was a big motivation for her to have that stability in her life and have a father figure in her life. And I really wrestled with that decision, though, because I did love her so much. I still love her, obviously. And I wished and wanted to be her mom and to parent her. And I had the support from my parents if I had went that route. But it was just, I couldn't find peace with parenting. And so I just wrestled with that, the heart of loving her with the head logic of like adoption makes sense too. And around 7 months is where I really, for me, my faith kind of came into play and just felt like, okay, God, tell me what to do, because I can't find peace and nothing is working how I want it to work or how I wish it would work. And so with my faith, I just felt like I'm going to trust you with my life and with this baby. And I really felt like adoption was the way to go, and to choose open adoption, and that he had a plan for us. And so that was the first time I felt peace, like my entire pregnancy. And things fell into place very quickly from that point. And I told my social worker I'm ready to look at profiles. And the first one I looked at, I fell in love with, in the sense I just felt like they saw me as a person too, and not just a transaction for something that would fill, their family, but they cared for me too. And I could tell that in their profile book. And there were visual connections too, of where we had the same kind of dog. And they reminded me of my dad and my stepmom. And it just felt like that she would, that we would go together as families, and she would blend in with them, which is funny now because she doesn't at all. But she looks just like her older adopted brother, we have no genetic connection, but they look alike. So it's funny. Like they're all very tall and she's short like me. So, but it's, in general though, like we all had, blondish brown hair and blue eyes and things like that. So, yeah, we spent 2 months getting to know each other and really talking through what we envision this open adoption to look like. And we spent that time visiting, and they asked me a lot of questions and invited me kind of into their world even then, and just talking through, what do I want to be called, and what do I envision for this? They're just very inclusive into their conversations with me, and I really I think it just showed their character, just like I had felt from the beginning. And then she was born in June, like we just talked about. And it was, for me, because I had so much support, it was a positive experience where there's still grief you're walking through and what's coming ahead and the emptiness that can follow. But it also was such a protected time because it was just surrounded by so much love from her family and giving me my space and my time to love on her and to make memories with her and my family. It just felt like a big reunion and like a family get together that I really feel blessed to have, because again, I know that's not always the case with birth mothers. And then our agreement, since we were in the same state, was 2 visits a year every June for her birthday, and then Christmas in December. And that has always been maintained through the last 19 years. But we've also, through the seasons, expanded on that greatly. In the first 3 years, it was almost every 1 to 2 months because we just had more time on our hands. And we naturally just clicked as, they were obviously, in their 30s and I was 16, but they came like a mentor in my life and just really like immersed me into the world, let me be a part of things and included me as many milestones as possible and photos and all those kinds of things. And so that was a really great time of building our foundation of our relationship, so that now that she's older, we have that trust and respect and all those things built to give her a safe place to have both of us. And then through the years, things have, you go through different seasons of what's going on in each other's lives and building our own separate lives, and those paths crossing through different parts of the year, depending on what's going on. But around, her teenage years, when she was having more questions and wanting to know more and one-on-one time, that really was a really, a neat time for her and I to build more of a direct relationship together. And she started to come stay at my house more. And they really honored that, curiosity that she had of knowing who I am more and her siblings that I have here. And it's been overall a very positive experience, while still navigating the challenges of it and all the emotions that come with it. But I'm so grateful that, we have each other to walk through it together, and just every day by day thinking like, what does she need and how can I help her in that? And, having, as someone told me, like a web of love around her. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, no, I know that a lot of people, I don't know if you're part of any Facebook groups of birth mother supports. A lot of people have had really negative experiences with open adoption where the parents have said one thing and then go back on that. How do you feel like, how you seem to have navigated it really well? And is it because of the adoptive parents and your agreement? Like, what do you think the difference is between the ones that are closed off and all of a sudden walk away, and the ones that are open and nurture that relationship between birth mother and child?
So I would say I have worked in adoption for 5 years too. So I think that adds to my understanding as well of just observing like both sides of things because I educate adoptive families. And it seems like the adoptive families who have this tender heart for the birth mom and understand the importance of having that role in their child's life and that their heart will be shared by both the adoptive family and the birth family and really honoring that. I feel like her family has been that from day one. They've realized and they've learned. I would say because they had adopted previously, that taught them a lot of things and really shaped their view of like, oh, we're missing this big void in his life and our life because they don't have the same relationship and it hasn't been possible. So when we were in this place where we agreed on it together, we knew how to that's our why. That's why we keep our communication open and we keep our vision, the big vision of creating this extended family and loving each other through it. I think that I've seen it go both ways too, where it's the adoptive parents can shut things off and to, essentially lie to the birth parents. And that is devastating. And so that's why I'm constantly educating, like, don't do that. Here's how you can have empathy and compassion and understand and allow her in these places because it really matters. But I've also seen birth mothers who haven't been able to do that or to have that openness because it is really devastating and it's hard. And if they don't have that support and the healing, it can be hard to push into the relationship and to be up close to it because it pricks the wound. And I know many adoptive parents who wish they could have an openness too. So I feel like we in the birth mother community, we definitely see a lot of that hurt. And that's why I'm constantly advocating and educating to help prevent that and to help other families understand the importance. But I do think for us, it's worked well because we've had the same vision and that's anchored us through it all, and that being on the same page and just keeping that in mind in every situation is what made it work well.
When you have educated adoptive families, is there like maybe a top 3 of what you tell them, like of how to have a relationship with the birth mother? It's not because you don't want them. And maybe this is me thinking like, are they threatened by the birth mom? Are they scared the birth mom's going to come back and take the baby? So they're triggered.
I can tell you that.
Yeah. She's she's an adoptive parent. So she can, I guess.
Well, no, but exactly. That's the biggest concern.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that if you allow them in, then either the child will want to naturally gravitate back to their birth mom, or that the birth mom will all of a sudden change her mind and want the child back.
Yes.
I mean, that's
like the core fear of it.
Yeah.
And there's also the misconception that it's confusing for the child.
Yes.
And so those are like the 2 biggest things that I'm now, discussing and dispelling of like, this is how we've seen that not to be true in our case and many other cases of adoptees and birth parents. And I don't know. Those are definitely the 2 biggest things.
Do you think that because it was something that was like from the get-go, the norm for your for your child, that relationship, and so she just knew and it made it easier? I'm wondering because I have an adopted brother who's the birth mom tried to come in later when he was like 11 or 12, which made it a little more, I think it made it harder.
Complicated.
Yes, and complicated for him, confusing to him about the situation. So, and he's a little bit slower too. But I just wondered if that could be a huge factor if it's something that you just start right from the get-go. And
Absolutely.
it's just normal, than trying to dive into it when the child's like 12 or 13 or
Yeah,
we've seen at those ages that are just hard anyway.
Like if you introduce them at the very beginning, they know no different.
Yes,
exactly.
Right? And so it's just normal.
Their lives.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what we've seen. And she has said that herself of like, I've always known who you were. I've always known I'm adopted. You've always been a part of my life. So it is just her normal. And so
Yes.
she's been very grateful for that. And I would say like with her birth father side, it's more of that struggle of
Yeah.
all the different typical adoptee emotions and feelings of rejection and questions. And, you know, as it's a lot more uncomfortable for them to start building a relationship now. And now that she's in her teenage years. So I do think having the established as early as possible is a good thing. However, I do think it's still good, even if it's 5 years down the road, or you only have a semi-open until a certain amount of time, or
So they can
you know, there's so
understand.
many, and there's conversations that people are having at home, regardless of your relationship. Um, those are vital because they were doing that even between our visits, was, you know, reading books about our adoption and having our pictures around and talking about this is your birth mom and this is your birth grandma. And like, those are things that adoptive parents can be doing to create that normalcy if and when the birth family is able to like actually visit or to be more included.
Is your daughter's birth father, have they started a relationship? Or is he still kind of not?
I think it's just really awkward. He's definitely has tried. It's all kind of, you know, online at this point. And huge props of him for like, he's reached a point where he's like, oh, I've missed a lot. And, you know, he's, you know, there's trying to have those conversations, but I think it's really awkward for her to like, suddenly you're part of this picture. And I think, you know, that trust hasn't been built, and it's just a lot different. But I do feel like they're taking baby steps, which I think is always a good thing.
I was wondering if you think it's more difficult for her to trust because she's had it with you. And so she's probably thinking,
Where
where
the hell
were
were
you?
Yeah.
This whole time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I know that it was available to you to be able to be there like you have been, but he never took advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's a big pain point that she is having to work through as a young adult. And yeah, I think that's got to be hard to,
Yeah.
as a child, and you know,
Yeah.
to work to think through those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's lucky she has a really great support system. It
Yeah.
sounds like, obviously, with you and your family, and I'm sure she has a relationship with your kids and your
Mhm.
husband and her adoptive family.
Yeah.
So how did you get to, you said you worked in adoption for like 5 years.
Mhm.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit and tell us kind of what you were doing?
Sure. I still do. I work with hopeful adoptive parents to, one, work on their profile book, but in kind of a sneaky way of like educating about birth parent perspective while in that process.
Every adoptive family needs someone like you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So it's something tangible that's part of their, you know, home study and preparing process, but I get them early enough that I can kind of help create that tender heart. And because a lot of times they've never talked to another birth mom before, and they're able to ask me questions of like what we've talked about and kind of dispel some of those fears that they have. And in doing so, you know, I'm hoping that it's a ripple effect of where more people can have a better understanding and have better experiences within adoption. And so that's largely what I do, is the consultation calls and working on profile books. And I've also done like curriculums before. I've done birth mom, post-placement curriculums. I've done I write articles. I do all kinds of things, but largely it's education.
I know. I was actually going to ask you. So, just about the birth mom curriculum. That's really interesting. That's something that I've always thought about too. Like, how do you educate the birth moms as well? Because
that's after placement, right?
Yeah, after placement. Because I'm like, I had a really great support system as well afterwards. And I think that that's a huge part of how I was able to move through some of that grief and some of those really hard emotions, because your frontal cortex is not developed, right? Because I was 18, but it's still not developed. So how did that come about, and how did that start? Was it from your own experience? Was it because you saw the need? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I definitely saw the need, because there are some out there, but there's so many different kinds of birth moms, like there's some that are in faith, there's some that doesn't identify with a faith. There's so many different ways that people have found healing. And so this one was a faith-based one through Abiding Love Charities. And so I worked with them for a little bit to help create that. And largely those things, it was a collaborative effort. It wasn't just me, but having like therapist perspectives, along with adding my personal experiences and what I've learned through the years of what's helped me in my own therapy, and hoping that helps kind of be passed on to other birth moms to work through some of those things, and to encourage them to not just from the adoptive perspective, but on a personal level, because I feel like if we can heal ourselves as people and through our adoption experiences or whatever things we've gone through, our childhood things, then we are better able to be in healthier relationships. And that includes our adoption relationship. So that was kind of the approach we had, was dealing with adoption grief and understanding and giving them a safe place and validating their feelings, while also encouraging, like, here's how you can be more aware of how you communicate, and how does that tie into communicating with your child's adoptive parents and those kinds of things, and having healthy expectations of what adoption can look like, or what's realistic and what's not, and those kinds of things. So I'm really proud of the work that we did in that, and I hope, I don't work with them anymore, but I hope that it's serving people in a positive way.
I love that. I love that so much.
Well, because we just, tried to do a podcast asking some kind of questions for
just
that of the support group of after placement.
What to expect after placement, because sometimes you just don't know. And adoption was never like on my radar either. It's like you knew people who adopted children, but then you didn't know everything, like the underbelly of it all. And so coming into it and not knowing what happens after and all of that extra stuff, it's nice if they could go somewhere. So I'm glad to hear that you have created that curriculum, and hopefully that is continuing. You're like, I don't know.
I think so.
Oh, go ahead. I
was just going to say, just like there's so many different scenarios, and there's so many different things that are needed post-placement. So like one sounds more practical and logical, of like kind of like adoptive parent education, in the sense of like, here's what to expect with XYZ. And being able, I don't know, there may still be a need of like, here's what to expect of after, your grief as a birth mom after placement and those kinds of things. So I feel like there's just so much that can be talked about, and the more where everybody is contributing to that as much as possible, like that's a beautiful thing to get it out there more.
How did you deal with your grief after placement? Because you did have an open adoption, so there you were able to see her all the time. A lot of the birth moms that I've seen is, they've placed a baby and it's been 2 months or 6 months and they're just devastated, grief stricken. They're like, I want my baby back. And my thought process is more of, well, do you want the baby back because you think it's going to end your grief? Do you want your baby back because you really believe that you can parent? I mean, there's so many questions that go with that. So how did you handle the grief, especially being an open adoption and seeing her all the time? Because that could have been really, really hard to know that you were not parenting, but you were still heavily involved in her life. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing was my support system at home with my parents, and giving me a safe place to talk about my feelings, and to I've heard so many horror stories of the moms are just like the birth grandparents are like, you should be over this by now. We just don't talk about this. Like, I was never told, don't talk about this. Why are you not over it? None of that stuff. Like, my feelings were validated. And I think that because I didn't have to shove things under the rug and pretend I'm okay, that helped me to move quicker through the process of it. And then I have my therapist as well for at least a year, if not more. So those are things. Writing became really huge. That's when I started blogging and journaling even more so, and finding other birth parents to talk to, birth moms to talk to, like you were talking about, like a few steps ahead of like to know what to expect and how they handle different things, or just to say, call them up and say, I'm having a really hard day. I really miss her, and just cry on the phone together and just know like I get it. And then I also had a retreat that I started going to that was local at the time. And that was helpful just to be in the room with someone who understood and to work through things. So big picture, that those are the really important pieces along with my faith. But I think with seeing her off, like our first visit was supposed to be 6 months later. At a week, I guess I called them up, or I told my social worker or someone, and I was like, I'm having a really hard time. I really just want to see her and like know that she's good because I feel empty. And they allowed me to come to their house, and we had a great visit, and I got to like hold her again. And for me, that just solidified my decision even more, because it was the grief that she wasn't with me, but I still really felt adoption was the best thing for her, and she was where she was meant to be. I had peace with that, but I just needed to see her again and to hold her again and feel the weight of her again in my arms, because that alone is a huge transition, when that weight literally is like it's not a part of you anymore and you feel lonely. Even with the kids that I have parented, and like they're in the bassinet next to me or in a different room, it feels unnatural because it's like they were so connected to me for 9 months. And so I think for me, the visits really helped me to have those tangible moments that I could hold her and be a part of her life and have memories with her and pictures with her to hold on to through my grief, while still holding on to the peace that she's where she's meant to be. And for openness was a big part of that. I think it helped my grief because it just reassured my decision. And I loved her parents, and they were so great the whole time. I know that's not the case for every birth mom, because like you said, it can be hard to be like, that's her mom now, and she's the one who's holding her and waking up with her at night and all those kinds of things. And sometimes I did wrestle with the anger of that as part of my grief cycle. But I think it's just going back to my why of why I chose adoption for her at that time. And as we were talking about before, with them being so open-hearted to including me as much as possible and allowing me to have those little moments that can mean the world as a birth mom, of like getting to feed her a bottle or pick out the clothes she's wearing for the day or whatever it is. Like I still had those kinds of moments to be a part of, to help through my grief too.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, that would have been nice.
And I know it's like really idyllic, and I'm grateful for that, but I also honor that like it's not possible for everybody, or it hasn't been possible, and that's hard to it's kind of like survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I was the lucky one, but this is why I advocate and help hopefully other families have more connection, because it is such a help.
Yeah. I think it would have been hard for me to go to see him, because I had a boy, and I think it would have been hard for me to see him and hold him, even though, like you said, I felt very confident in my choice of adoption, and I loved his parents. I still think they're amazing, but I think that would have been hard. And like you said, every situation is so different. Every birth mom, every adopted family, every adoption story is so incredibly different. Does your daughter, so one thing that my son has said to me is it's hard for him to reconcile having two parents, two moms that he feels so incredibly close to, and he doesn't want to make her feel less than, even though we've spent more time together. And there's that, he's like, I just feel this natural connection to you. And so he's like, is that possible to love both women as a mom? Has your daughter ever kind of said that to you or struggled with that? And what was your response to her on that?
Yes, I think that's a very normal thing that I've heard, but we talk about that often because she's constantly aware and like what doesn't want her mom to feel there's that guilt of like, am I talking too much about you to her, or am I comparing you too much? So she's very much aware of those things. My response is, because I grew up with a mom and a stepmom. I've known my stepmom as long as I can remember. They were like 18 months old when my dad and her got together. So I literally don't remember anything else. This is my normal. And I feel the same way towards them, that I love them both. They provide different perspectives. One I'm biologically connected to and have more of we look alike, our talents are similar, our thinking is similar, those kinds of things. While I really love my stepmom too, for all the things she's done for me and the love she's given me in a different way. And so while it's not adoption, I can relate to that feeling of feeling in the middle or torn, and loving, and just being aware of their feelings and making sure that I'm, trying to spend time with both, or, navigating holidays and those kinds of things like that. So it's really, I think it's very normal. And an open adoption for us, I think, is just a different kind of blended family. It's just a different labels on it. But if we can approach it from that, in that, a different perspective, that it's really normal and common, and allowing them, I think on both sides, both the birth parent side and the adoptive side, allowing them to know that it's okay to love both. And it's okay to, make plans here, or to whatever that looks like giving them that space and flexibility to have both. And I think that's another reason why our adoption has worked really well, is because we really respect that about each other, and giving her voice to decide when to do what as much as possible as she's gotten older.
And I think too, it's really important for kids. I mean, they want, and I don't know if power is the right word, but they want to feel like they're able to make their own decisions.
Control.
A little bit of control. Because
Yeah.
sometimes depending on your age, you feel like you're out of control. And when you can control a decision, it makes it better. And when you don't feel like you're being forced to do one thing or another, and maybe that's why your open adoption has been so, I don't want to use the word easy, because I'm sure it's ebbed and flowed, where sometimes it feels easy and sometimes it feels hard, but it's worked so well for you guys because you're allowing her that space and you're giving her the ability to make those choices.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think they've done a great job of giving her that freedom, even when it is hard. Even when there are challenges and adjustments after visits and things like that, they've still have been like, okay, this is your decision. If you feel like this is worth it, then we're going to support you in that. So I agree. I think having that flexibility and honoring her voice in it has been a huge part of it.
So is there any misconceptions that you feel like people have about birth mothers or adoption that you have addressed or would like to address?
I don't know. I feel like I think it's honestly mind-boggling that we're still fighting off the myths of like, oh, you just don't want your child, or you're on drugs and you're unsafe. And I feel like those cases may be there. They are there. It's possible, but it's also like the large majority that I've seen in the birth mom community are just women who are in a hard place, who love their children and want what's best for them. And that's not necessarily a scary thing, or it shouldn't be. It's just, we want to know that they are healthy and thriving and that they're loved, and we just want to watch them be able to grow up. And I think that's the biggest frustrating thing that I see.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love my mother, since I've been working with adoption, the last 6 months, she'll ask me questions or say things to me, and I'm like, what are you saying? That's such old school thinking. Why would you even say something like that? That's not even close to what it is, because even the handful of birth moms that I've worked with, every single one of them, whether they have been drug addicted or not, or the situation on how they got pregnant was not ideal. Every single one of them has said, I know that this is the best thing for my baby. I love my baby so incredibly much. I want my baby to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And this is why I'm making this decision, is because it's in the best interest of me and my child. So I think adoption is selfless, but it's also selfish a little bit. And I know maybe people will be mad about that, but because, it's like, I still wanted to be able to go to college, and I didn't think that I could parent, and we would have been struggling. And I'm like, that's not a place that I want to be. And I don't think that's a place for the baby that wants to be there either. So, I don't know if that is offensive too, that it's selfish, that that's okay.
Now, it's like what you've probably seen around social media. Like, it's both and. Like, I feel like both can be true.
Yeah.
I think
they can coexist.
Yeah. And that's just how adoption is. It just is. It's both joy and grief. It's both selfish and selfless. I think it's just complex. It's not clear cut and black and white.
Yeah. Which I think isn't life. Like, that's kind of what life is. It's not, people want to put things in a box. They want to have it nice, neat, wrapped up, and like perfect. And unfortunately, that's not.
Life doesn't work that way.
That's not how life works.
No.
Okay. So do you have any advice for anybody who is either thinking about placing a baby or somebody who is wanting to adopt? What would your advice be?
If you're thinking of placing your baby, I think the biggest thing that I've learned through the years and working more, like you said, the underbelly of it, is just making sure you're with someplace who is rooting for you and working for you. And that has the healing opportunities, has therapy, has resources for you. And just knowing that it's your decision and not to feel pressured into it. I, again, feel very grateful I was not in an agency or support system that made me feel like I had no other choice. It was truly my choice. And I pray that other birth moms and expectant moms can feel like it was their decision, and have the support and healing to do that. So who you work with is important. And for couples, hoping to adopt or in the process, my advice is always, the root of it is being open-handed and open-hearted, because parenting is hard regardless. And adding the adoption layer to it, it adds more complexity to it. And so just taking things day by day and being open-hearted, that we as parents in general cannot, force our kids to be a certain way or to be in the box that we want them to be or to do X, Y, Z. And when you add the adoption layer with biological differences or health differences and all those things, like, it's going to look different than what you think it's going to. And so just being open-hearted to just trust and follow their lead in a lot of ways, and having that flexibility to adjust your own expectations, to maintain a safe be a safe person for them, and maintain that connection as a parent for whatever they're walking through. And just being able to honor that their heart will feel that love, for their biological roots too, and being able to have a tender place for that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Do you have any other questions for Leah?
No.
I'm really actually excited to order your book and read it.
But what's the book on?
Is it the 16th Year?
Yes.
Yes.
My
okay.
book.
And
so it's my story.
Is it out yet? Like, I can order it, right? Okay.
Yes.
I'm really excited because I looked over each of the sections, and I'm a person of faith too. So I love reading perspectives of, women of faith, especially because a lot of times the women don't get the credit that they deserve. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to curl up in a blanket and a good book with a chai tea, just like you. I saw that. And I was like, oh my gosh, we could totally be friends.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I have to do oat milk too. I can't do the regular milk. My stomach hurts.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoy it. It's everything we've talked about here. It's just diving deeper into the details and really going over what I felt through the different times, what helped me through those times, my support system, things that her adoptive parents did that really showed their love for me, um, and the challenges that we faced loosely, generically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope it's a resource of, I've heard a lot of good feedback from adoptive parents to help get a,
Okay,
a
yeah.
perspective of birth parents. Obviously, every story is different, every birth mom's different, but it helps just create more of that compassion, empathy for their child's what their child's birth parent may have felt. But I also hope, like with other birth moms, like you're not alone, and our feelings are similar, even if our stories are different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting when you meet someone, right, who's been a birth mom, or you meet someone who is like, I'm from California. When I meet someone from California, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like, let's talk about it. Let's be best friends because we have similar things, even though, like you said, they're different.
I was born in California, but I moved here when I was 4.
That's
so
okay. We can
does
still
that count?
Yeah.
Just like,
So I'm really excited because I know that every story is different, but it's like this tapestry of similarities, right? Maybe the core or the base or the structure is the same, but everything inside, when you go into a home, the homes from outside could look the same, but the way the person decorates it is different. So I think that's how it is with adoption. It's like the structure's the same, but
our feelings are,
story.
I really like that you said, yeah, your feelings are the same.
Yeah,
even though
feelings are the same, even though the story is different.
Story's different. Yeah.
So
I like that.
you are like a gem, and I love talking to you. And
Yes.
I just can't wait to see how else you impact the adoptive world, because I think especially something like this, it needs people like you fighting for the birth moms and the adoptive families and just creating a safe space. And you're creating that safe space for everybody. So I appreciate it. And I mean,
Yeah.
I know we both appreciate it.
we
So
do.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that encouragement.
Yes.
So thank you for listening to Active Love Adoptions podcast. If you or someone you know is pregnant, please visit our website at activeloveadoptions.com.